The rain fell quietly over the city, washing neon lights across the pavement in streaks of red and gold. After 6 long years behind bars, Shane Daniels, played by Steven Seagal in A Dangerous Man, stepped back into a world that had moved on without him. Prison had taken time from him. But it hadn't taken his discipline, or his instincts. Shane wasn't an ordinary ex-con. Before prison, he had been a highly trained operative, a man who understood violence better than most men understand conversation. He had been set up, framed during a drug bust gone wrong. The system that once trusted him had turned its back on him. Now he was free, but not forgiven. All he wanted was peace. He moved into a small, run-down apartment on the edge of the city. No friends. No family visits. No celebrations. Just silence. He kept to himself, waking early, training alone, rebuilding his strength. The heavy bag in his living room swung like a pendulum, echoing dull thuds through the empty space. But the city outside was no longer the same. Crime had tightened its grip on every block. Fear lingered in the air. Local businesses shut their doors before sunset. Whispers spread about a powerful Chinese Mafia organization that now controlled the streets, moving drugs, weapons, and people through the shadows. Anyone who resisted disappeared. Shane noticed the signs immediately. Black sedans cruising too slowly. Men watching from corners. Store owners speaking in hushed tones. The city wasn't just struggling, it was occupied. One night, unable to sleep, Shane stepped out for a walk. The streets were nearly empty, rain still tapping softly against metal fire escapes. That's when he heard it, shouting in a language he didn't recognize, followed by a scream. Across the street, under the flickering light of a broken street lamp, several men surrounded another man on his knees. One of them held a gun. Shane's eyes narrowed. He could walk away. It wasn't his fight. The gun fired. The body hit the pavement. And in that moment, one of the attackers looked up and locked eyes with Shane. Silence. They had seen him. And now, the most dangerous mistake the Chinese Mafia would ever make was letting him walk away alive. The gunshot still echoed in the night when the black sedan screeched away from the curb. Tires hissed against wet pavement as the convoy disappeared into the darkness, leaving behind a lifeless body and one witness they hadn't planned for. Shane Daniels didn't move at first. Rain tapped steadily against his jacket as he stared at the scene across the street. His instincts told him to disappear, to go back inside and pretend he had seen nothing. After all, he had just gotten out of prison. Trouble was the last thing he needed. But then he heard something else. A soft, panicked breath. From behind a parked car near the alleyway, a young woman slowly rose, her hands trembling. She had seen everything too. Their eyes met. "Please," she whispered. "They'll come back." Shane crossed the street calmly, kneeling beside the fallen man just long enough to confirm what he already knew. Gone. Execution style. Professional. He stood and looked at the woman. "Do you know them?" She nodded weakly. "Triads. They run this district. I wasn't supposed to see this." Headlights suddenly flashed at the end of the block. They had come back. "Stay behind me," Shane said quietly. 2 black sedans rolled to a stop. 4 men stepped out, calm, controlled, confident. One of them, tall and sharply dressed, studied Shane carefully. "You saw something tonight," the man said with a faint accent. His tone wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Shane didn't answer. The man's eyes shifted to the frightened woman. She saw something too. A pause. Then a faint smile. "This doesn't concern you," the man said to Shane. "Walk away." For a split second, Shane considered it. He owed this city nothing. It had thrown him away once already. But the woman's hand gripped his sleeve. "Please," she whispered again. Shane exhaled slowly. "No," he said. The word hung in the air like a challenge. The tall man's smile faded. He gestured slightly with 2 fingers. The first attacker lunged. The movement was fast, but Shane was faster. He stepped aside, redirecting the punch with surgical precision, twisting the man's arm until a sharp crack cut through the rain. Before the second attacker could draw his weapon, Shane drove a brutal elbow into his throat, dropping him instantly. The third man pulled a knife. Big mistake. Shane disarmed him in one fluid motion, the blade clattering across the pavement before its owner followed. The fourth hesitated, just long enough. Shane closed the distance and ended it with a single, devastating strike. Silence returned to the street. Rain continued to fall. The tall man stared at his fallen crew, shock flickering behind his calm exterior. "You're not ordinary," he said slowly. Shane's eyes were cold. "You should have listened." Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Someone had called the police. The tall man stepped backward toward the sedan. "This isn't over." "It never is," Shane replied. The car sped off, leaving the wounded men behind as the sirens grew louder. The young woman looked at Shane in disbelief. "Who are you?" "No one," he answered. But even as he said it, he knew the truth. He had just declared war. By sunrise, the Chinese Mafia would know exactly who he was, or at least, they would try to. And when they found out about his past, about his training, about what he was capable of, they wouldn't try to intimidate him again. They would try to eliminate him. Because now, Shane Daniels wasn't just a witness. He was a threat. By morning, the city was already whispering. 4 enforcers hospitalized. 1 dead execution witness missing. And a mysterious man who had dismantled trained fighters in under a minute. Inside a high-rise office overlooking the harbor, the Triad leadership gathered in tense silence. The room smelled of expensive cigars and polished wood. At the head of the table sat the man they called Chairman Lau, calm, composed, and rarely surprised. But today, he was not pleased. "You're telling me," Lau said softly, "that one man did this?" The tall enforcer from the night before stood stiffly. A bruise darkened his jaw. "Yes, Chairman." He moved like military. Precise. Efficient. Lau folded his hands. "Then find out who he is." Within hours, the Triads began digging. Security footage. Police databases. Street informants. It didn't take long. Shane Daniels, one of Lau's tech specialists, reported. Former Special Forces. Decorated. Convicted on drug charges 6 years ago. Recently released. Lau's eyes narrowed slightly. Convicted, but not disgraced. "No, Chairman." The arrest was controversial. Lau leaned back in his chair. "So," he murmured, "a trained warrior with nothing to lose." Across town, Shane was already preparing. He knew retaliation was inevitable. Organizations like this didn't forgive humiliation. They erased it. The young woman he had protected, her name was Tia, sat at his small kitchen table, still shaken. "You should leave the city," she urged. "They won't stop." Shane calmly loaded fresh batteries into a flashlight. "Running only tells them they're stronger." "They are stronger," she said. "There are hundreds of them." He met her eyes. "Numbers don't win fights. Discipline does." Before she could respond, a loud explosion shattered the quiet morning. The windows blew inward. Smoke filled the apartment as flames erupted from the living room. "They found us!" Tia screamed. Shane grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the fire escape just as the front door burst open. Armed men stormed inside through the smoke, guns raised. Bullets ripped through drywall. Shane moved with terrifying calm. He pushed Tia onto the metal staircase outside. "Go down. Don't stop." Then he turned back inside. Through fire and smoke, he advanced. One gunman swung his weapon toward him, too slow. Shane deflected the barrel, driving the man into the wall. Another attacker rushed forward, but Shane caught him mid-charge, slamming him onto a burning table before disarming him. The hallway filled with chaos, shouting in Mandarin, gunfire, crackling flames. Shane grabbed one of the attackers and pinned him against the wall. "Who gave the order?" he demanded. The man spat blood but said nothing. Shane tightened his grip slightly, not enough to kill, just enough to persuade. "Chairman Lau," the man finally gasped. Shane released him. The building's fire alarm screamed as he escaped through the stairwell, rejoining Tia in the alley below. Behind them, flames consumed everything he owned. His apartment. His clothes. His attempt at a quiet life. All gone. Across the city, Lau watched live drone footage of the burning building. "Is he dead?" he asked. "No confirmation yet," his tech specialist replied. As if summoned by instinct, Lau's phone buzzed. An unknown number. He answered. A calm voice spoke on the other end. "You missed." Silence filled the office. Lau's expression hardened. "You are persistent," he said into the phone. "And you're predictable," Shane replied. "You burned my home. You interfered in my business. You executed a man in the street. That is not your concern. It is now." The line went dead. For the first time in years, Chairman Lau felt something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. Back in the alley, Tia stared at Shane in disbelief. "You just called him." "He needed to understand something," Shane said. "What?" "That I'm not hiding." Sirens wailed in the distance again, police responding to the explosion. But Shane didn't look worried. He looked focused. The Triads had escalated. They had made it personal. And when criminals made things personal with a man like Shane Daniels, they made it permanent. He turned to Tia. "Do you know where they operate from?" She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "The docks. Warehouse district." Shane's eyes hardened. "Good," he said quietly. Because now this wasn't about survival. It was about dismantling an empire, piece by piece. And the Chinese Mafia had just declared war on the most dangerous kind of enemy. A man with training, patience, and absolutely nothing left to lose. The docks never truly slept. Even past midnight, the warehouse district pulsed with quiet activity. Cargo cranes groaning overhead, shipping containers stacked like steel skyscrapers, forklifts humming through narrow corridors of shadow. It was the perfect place to hide an empire in plain sight. Shane stood on a rooftop 2 blocks away, watching. Below him, men in dark suits moved with purpose between Warehouse 17 and a line of unmarked trucks. No company logos. No official paperwork. Just routine efficiency, the kind built on confidence and corruption. Tia crouched beside him, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's one of their main transfer points. Weapons come in. Drugs go out. Security?" Shane asked. "Armed. And protected." "Protected how?" She hesitated. "Some police don't come here." Shane's jaw tightened slightly. Corruption. That explained the speed of the retaliation. The firebombing of his apartment hadn't triggered immediate arrests. No roadblocks. No official statements. Someone inside the system was shielding them. Shane scanned the perimeter again. Cameras mounted at each corner. Guards rotating every 6 minutes. 2 snipers on elevated container stacks. Professional. He almost smiled. Professional meant predictable. "You stay here," he told Tia. "What?" "No. This won't take long." Before she could argue further, Shane was already moving, descending the fire escape with silent precision. He approached the outer fence from the blind side of a camera sweep. Timing the rotation perfectly, he vaulted the chain-link barrier and rolled smoothly behind a stack of pallets. A guard rounded the corner. Shane struck fast, one controlled blow to the solar plexus, a precise elbow to the base of the skull. The man dropped silently. Shane caught him before he hit the ground. Inside the main warehouse, activity buzzed under fluorescent lights. Wooden crates stamped with false export labels were being loaded into trucks. Shane slipped inside through a side door. He moved like a shadow, unseen, unheard. A forklift operator glanced up too late. Shane disabled him and continued forward. Then he saw something that stopped him cold. In the center office above the warehouse floor, behind reinforced glass, stood 2 uniformed police officers. Laughing. One of them shook hands with a Triad lieutenant before accepting a thick envelope. Shane's suspicions were confirmed. The network ran deeper than street-level crime. It was embedded in the system. A guard suddenly spotted the unconscious forklift operator and shouted. Too late. Shane launched forward. Chaos erupted inside the warehouse. He disarmed the nearest gunman before a shot could be fired, twisting the weapon away and sending its owner crashing into a crate. Another attacker rushed him with a baton. Shane intercepted the swing, countering with brutal efficiency. Bullets tore into the ceiling as panicked guards opened fire wildly. Shane moved between cover points, precise and controlled, never wasting motion. One by one, the enforcers fell. Up in the glass office, the corrupt officers stared in disbelief. "Who is that guy?" one shouted. The Triad lieutenant grabbed his phone. "Call Chairman Lau. Now." Shane reached the staircase leading to the office level. Two armed men blocked his path. He advanced anyway. One fired. Shane sidestepped, slamming the attacker's wrist into the railing until the weapon fell. The second charged recklessly, only to be thrown down the steps with crushing force. Shane climbed the rest of the way without hesitation. Inside the glass office, panic spread. The lieutenant pulled a pistol, aiming directly at Shane as he kicked the door open. "Stop right there." Shane didn't stop. The gun fired, but Shane had already shifted position. The bullet shattered glass behind him. In one fluid motion, Shane closed the distance, disarmed the lieutenant, and drove him into the desk. The two corrupt officers backed away, hands raised. "You don't understand," one stammered. "We were just complicit," Shane finished coldly. Below, sirens began to echo in the distance again. This time, louder. Faster. Someone must have reported the explosion of violence. The lieutenant coughed, blood at the corner of his mouth. "You think this ends us? Lau owns this city." Shane leaned closer. "Not anymore." He grabbed the lieutenant's phone from the desk and dialed the last number called. Chairman Lau answered almost immediately. "What now?" Lau demanded, irritation barely masked. Shane glanced around at the destruction. Fallen guards, shattered glass, exposed corruption. "You have a leak," Shane said calmly. Silence. Then Lau's voice hardened. "You are forcing my hand." "I already did." The line disconnected. Outside, flashing red and blue lights reflected off steel containers as police cruisers surrounded the docks. But something was different this time. These officers weren't casually strolling in. They were moving in tactical formation. Because tonight, the hidden network had been exposed. And whispers were already spreading through the underworld. The man they tried to burn alive wasn't just fighting back. He was dismantling them. Systematically. Relentlessly. And for the first time since seizing control of the city, the Triads were no longer hunting a target. They were being hunted. By sunrise, the balance of power had shifted. News of the dockside assault spread fast through the underworld. Warehouse 17 was compromised. Corrupt officers were under internal review. Millions in product had been seized. And at the center of it all was one name whispered with growing unease. Shane Daniels. Inside his penthouse office, Chairman Lau stood silently, staring out at the skyline. The city had always bowed to him. Politicians, businessmen, even law enforcement. Control was his greatest weapon. But control was slipping. "He attacked our operations twice in 24 hours, Lau said calmly. "This is no longer intimidation. This is defiance." The tall enforcer from earlier stepped forward carefully. "We underestimated him." Lau turned slowly. "That mistake will not happen again." He pressed a button on his desk. "Send the dragons." Across the city, word reached Shane through Tia's contacts. "The dragons?" she asked nervously. "They're not street soldiers. They're assassins. Lau only uses them when he wants someone erased completely." Shane loaded fresh rounds into a magazine with steady hands. "Good," he replied. "You don't understand," she insisted. "These men are former military. International contractors. They don't fight fair." Shane looked at her calmly. "Neither do I." That night, the air felt heavier. The streets were unusually empty, as if the city itself sensed what was coming. Shane waited in an abandoned parking structure overlooking a busy intersection. He knew Lau would send them somewhere public. Somewhere symbolic. A message. Headlights suddenly flickered at the far entrance. 3 black SUVs rolled in slowly, engines humming like predators circling prey. Doors opened in perfect synchronization. 6 men stepped out. Dressed in tactical black. Faces emotionless. Movements disciplined. Professionals. The lead assassin removed his gloves methodically. "Shane Daniels," he called out into the shadows. "You've made an impression." Shane stepped forward from behind a concrete pillar. "So have you," he replied evenly. The first shot cracked through the air without warning. Shane had already moved. He dove behind cover as bullets chipped concrete around him. The assassin spread out instantly, flanking with military precision. This wasn't a street fight. This was a coordinated kill operation. Shane timed their rhythm, counting steps, anticipating angles. When one assassin advanced too confidently, Shane struck. A swift disarm. A brutal counter. The man dropped before he could cry out. 5 left. 2 moved high, climbing the parking ramp for elevation. The others pressed forward, covering each other flawlessly. Shane retreated strategically, drawing them deeper. A flashbang detonated, lighting the structure in a burst of white. But Shane had anticipated that too. He emerged through the fading smoke behind one of them, locking the man's arm and turning his own rifle against his team. Chaos fractured their formation. Gunfire echoed like thunder between concrete walls. One assassin charged with a combat knife. Their blades clashed in a close, vicious exchange, steel scraping steel. Shane twisted sharply, disarming him and ending the fight with cold efficiency. 3 left. The leader signaled silently. They switched tactics. Instead of rushing, they tightened their triangle formation, advancing methodically. Shane respected that. This was no longer about intimidation. This was a duel between warriors. He vaulted over a railing to the lower level, landing hard but steady. The assassins followed without hesitation. A black SUV roared to life suddenly, driven remotely toward Shane's position. He sprinted sideways as the vehicle smashed into a support column, metal screeching. Using the distraction, Shane closed the gap on one more attacker. A sharp elbow. A sweep. Silence. 2 left. The leader removed his tactical vest slowly, tossing it aside. "No more games," he said. They circled each other in the dim light. The assassin attacked first, precise, calculated strikes. Shane countered each one, absorbing, redirecting, striking back. Every blow carried weight. Finally, Shane gained leverage, locking the man's arm and slamming him against a pillar. "You're good," the leader admitted through clenched teeth. "So are you," Shane replied. Then he ended it. The final assassin, wounded but standing, stared at the fallen bodies around him. "You can't win," he spat. "Lau will send more." Shane stepped closer. "Tell your boss something," he said quietly. The assassin hesitated. "I'm not running." Sirens echoed faintly again in the distance, drawn by the gunfire. The wounded assassin staggered toward the remaining SUV and sped away, barely escaping before police lights flooded the structure. Shane stood alone among the wreckage, breathing steady, unshaken. Across the city, Chairman Lau received confirmation. The dragons failed. For the first time in years, Lau felt something deeper than anger. Fear. Because this was no longer about protecting an operation. This was about survival. And Shane Daniels had just proven something undeniable. The dragon had fire. But the lion had no fear. The city felt different now. Not safer, but aware. The Triads were no longer invisible. Their warehouses had been raided. Their assassins defeated. Their corrupt alliances exposed. For the first time in years, Chairman Lau's empire had cracks in it. And Lau knew there was only one way to end this. Eliminate Shane Daniels personally. No more intermediaries. No more hired specialists. This would be decided face to face. Through his remaining contacts, Shane learned where Lau would be that night, the upper floors of a luxury high-rise overlooking the harbor. Officially, it was the headquarters of an international import-export company. Unofficially, it was the heart of the operation. Tia grabbed his arm before he left. "You don't have to do this alone," she said. "Yes," Shane replied calmly. "I do." The building towered above the waterfront like a monument to power. Glass walls. Private security. Underground parking. Shane didn't walk through the front entrance. He entered through the service tunnels beneath the structure, maintenance corridors rarely monitored. He moved silently, disabling 2 guards before they had time to raise alarms. But Lau had prepared for him. As Shane stepped into the main lobby, the lights suddenly shut off. Emergency red lighting flickered on. The trap had been sprung. From the upper balconies, armed men emerged, not street soldiers, not assassins, but Lau's final loyalists. Elite enforcers who had been with him since the beginning. A voice echoed through the dark lobby. "You have persistence," Lau said over the speaker system. "But persistence without wisdom is suicide." Shane didn't answer. Gunfire erupted from above. He rolled behind a marble pillar as bullets shattered glass and chipped stone. The lobby turned into a battlefield. Shane advanced strategically, moving from cover to cover. He neutralized the first wave with calculated precision, disarming one, incapacitating another, using their own positioning against them. More poured in from the stairwells. Lau wasn't holding back. Shane grabbed a fallen weapon but used it sparingly. His movements were controlled, conserving energy. Every strike was purposeful. Every takedown clean. The elevator at the end of the lobby suddenly opened. 2 heavily armored enforcers stepped out, wielding automatic rifles. Shane sprinted sideways as the marble desk behind him exploded under gunfire. He slid across the polished floor, grabbing a fallen smoke grenade from a tactical vest and activating it. Thick gray smoke flooded the lobby. Through the haze, Shane moved like a ghost. 1 armored enforcer fell. Then the second. Silence returned, broken only by distant alarms and the crackle of damaged wiring. The elevator doors remained open. Waiting. Shane stepped inside and pressed the top floor button. As the elevator ascended, he adjusted his jacket calmly. His breathing steady. His focus absolute. The doors opened to a private penthouse office. Chairman Lau stood near the window, the city lights glowing behind him. A polished desk. Expensive artwork. Absolute composure. "You've destroyed years of work," Lau said evenly. "You built it on fear," Shane replied. Lau picked up a glass of whiskey but didn't drink it. "Fear is efficient. It creates order." "No," Shane said. "It creates enemies." Lau set the glass down slowly. "You could have walked away that night. You executed a man in the street. He was a liability. And I'm not." Lau smiled faintly. "You are something else entirely." Suddenly, Lau reached into his desk and pulled out a concealed handgun. But Shane was already moving. The shot fired, missing by inches. Shane closed the distance in seconds, knocking the weapon aside. The 2 men clashed violently across the office. Unlike his soldiers, Lau knew how to fight. Their exchange was raw and direct. No distractions, no teams, just skill against skill. Lau struck with surprising force, but Shane absorbed the blows, redirecting momentum, waiting for the opening. It came. A shift in balance. A fraction of hesitation. Shane locked Lau's arm, twisting sharply and driving him against the glass wall overlooking the harbor. The glass cracked. "You lost control," Shane said quietly. Lau struggled but couldn't break free. "You think killing me changes anything?" Lau spat. "Someone else will rise." "Maybe," Shane replied. "But not tonight." Sirens echoed far below. This time, they weren't corrupt officers. This time, they were federal units, alerted by the evidence Shane had leaked from the docks. The elevator dinged again. Boots rushed down the hallway. Lau heard them too. His empire collapsing in real time. Shane released him just as armed federal agents stormed the office. Chairman Lau was forced to his knees, handcuffed, his expression no longer calm. As agents secured the room, one turned to Shane. "Daniels, you're under investigation too." Shane nodded once. "I'll be here." He didn't run. He didn't hide. Because this wasn't about revenge. It was about ending it. As Lau was dragged toward the elevator, he looked back at Shane one last time. "You could have ruled beside me," Lau said coldly. Shane's expression never changed. "I don't rule," he replied. "I survive." And with that, the dragon fell. Not to an army. Not to a rival empire. But to one man who refused to be afraid. By sunrise, the city felt like it had exhaled for the first time in years. News helicopters circled above the high-rise as federal agents escorted Chairman Lau out in handcuffs. Camera flashes lit up the harbor. Reporters shouted questions that would go unanswered. The untouchable empire had fallen overnight. Warehouse raids continued across the district. Hidden bank accounts were frozen. Arrest warrants were issued for officials who once believed themselves protected by silence. The corrupt officers from the docks were taken into custody before they could destroy evidence. For the first time, the Triads weren't controlling the headlines. They were the headline. Inside a temporary federal command center, Shane Daniels sat alone at a steel table. An agent placed a file in front of him. "You understand," the agent said carefully, "that you're not exactly innocent in all this." Shane nodded once. "I defended myself." "You also launched an unsanctioned assault on organized crime." Shane met the agent's gaze evenly. "Would you have preferred I let them keep running it?" The agent didn't answer immediately. Outside the room, officers moved quickly, processing detainees and coordinating operations. The scale of corruption being uncovered was staggering. Finally, the agent closed the file. "There are people upstairs who believe you saved lives," he said quietly. "There are others who believe you complicated things." "That sounds about right," Shane replied. After a long pause, the agent stood. "For now, you're free to go. Don't leave the city." Shane rose without another word. Outside, the morning air was cool and clean. Tia stood across the street, watching anxiously. When she saw him walk out unrestrained, relief flooded her face. "It's over?" she asked. "For them," Shane said. She looked at the skyline, at the building where Lau had once stood untouchable. "You didn't kill him," she observed. "No. You could have." "Yes." "Why didn't you?" Shane considered the question. "Because if I had," he said calmly, "it would have made him a martyr. Now he's just a criminal." In the days that followed, the ripple effects spread far beyond the city. Federal investigations uncovered financial trails leading to international partners. Lau's organization fractured without its central leadership. Smaller factions tried to rise, but none had the structure or influence to rebuild what had fallen. Local businesses reopened later in the evenings. Residents walked the streets with a little less fear. It wasn't perfect, crime never disappears entirely, but the suffocating grip of one dominant force was gone. News outlets speculated about the mysterious figure who had triggered the collapse. Some called him a vigilante. Others called him a hero. Shane called himself neither. One evening, he stood at the harbor, watching cargo ships move slowly against the horizon. The city lights reflected off the water like scattered embers. Tia approached quietly. "They're saying you changed everything," she said. Shane shook his head slightly. "No," he replied. "They were already breaking. I just pushed." She studied him carefully. "What will you do now?" For the first time since his release from prison, Shane allowed himself a moment to think about the future. His name was cleared publicly that afternoon. The evidence Lau's network had kept buried, proof of corruption in the original case that sent him to prison, had surfaced during the federal seizures. His conviction was under formal review. 6 stolen years. There was no way to get them back. But there was a way to move forward. "I'll stay," he said finally. "For a while." "Why?" He looked at the city one more time. "Because someone has to remind people that fear isn't permanent." Tia smiled faintly. Across town, squad cars still lined the streets near the docks. Reporters still broadcast live updates. Analysts debated the long-term implications of Lau's arrest. But in the quiet spaces between headlines and speculation, a different truth settled in. One man had stood up when it would have been easier to walk away. One man had refused to bow to intimidation. Not for glory. Not for revenge. But because he understood something simple and unshakable. Evil grows when good people decide it's not their problem. As night fell again, Shane walked alone down the same street where it had all begun, where a single gunshot had pulled him back into a war he never asked for. This time, the street was calm. No black sedans. No whispered threats. Just the distant sound of traffic and the steady rhythm of the city rebuilding itself. He paused under the flickering street lamp. For a moment, the memory of that first night lingered. Then he continued walking. Not as a hunted man. Not as a weapon. But as something far more dangerous to those who thrive on fear. A man who refuses to be controlled. And somewhere in the shadows of a recovering city, that legacy would endure, long after the dragon had fallen.